Dad about you coming back to Batavia? I mean, were they really happy to have you come
I don't
back?
think maybe that she was all that happy about it. I don't know. I should say I
That
don't.
wasn't a big factor in your decision.
No, I don't think. Well, my dad had fallen out of the tree. Remember, he didn't really fall out of the tree. He fell off the ladder. We're trimming a tree, and it broke his hip. And of course, that makes you think. Getting older, there's nobody there. Not what? Not me. And no, his brothers. My dad's closest brother, Fred, passed away. My mother didn't have anybody.
So did you have at this point, everything just was a real busy time? Mostly having to do with kids. You weren't working or anything outside the home.
Well, I started to work as soon as we moved to the house, the house on Van Nordwijk. We didn't really make enough money, so I really needed to get some little part-time job, and luckily, Jack and Dory introduced Jerry and I to, that's how I met Jerry. Was working at the old Schumann Labels, which was a label factory in Batavia for years, and what was then called, when we moved back, Allen Hollander Corporation, and they made labels. And had one guy, an old guy, had worked there for years as their artist. Production guy, artist, all around, took care of the label design and label pay stubs. Now, this is also out of date now, and it was it was even kind of out of date then, because Schumann Labels was a very old label company. So they probably hung on to those things longer than they should, because it was a very successful label company, and when it was bought by Allen Hollander. But anyway, he was an old guy. He'd worked there for years, too. See, how old was he? I think he was, well, of course, I thought 65 was old. But I think it was over 65, because he was really going to retire, but he was the only one there, and he worked there a long time.
Couldn't retire.
So I went to help him in that and I just loved him. He was the greatest guy. He lived in Chicago. And he was just a gentle person, and a quiet little sense of humor. And so the two of us sat back there and worked on our little labels, our little label pay stuff. And it was okay. I started to work afternoons. I didn't get in until 12:30. So when the little kids, Tim went to kindergarten. Tim was in kindergarten, and Kurt was just little. 1 year old. No, 2 year old. I was 2 years old. And then Tim must have been in first grade. Yeah.
So they started, early 67 there, after that first winter? Do you remember?
Pardon?
Do you remember when you started that first winter, or in the first few months we were there?
After Christmas, or after the big storm, whenever that was.
Well, that would have been February.
It was in that winter. It started that winter.
Okay.
And remember, we had all these babysitters, and I went and got this job, and I thought, when I went there, I thought, they're not going to pay me enough to even matter, But Jack told me to go see this guy, and, I said, doing pay stuff? He said it was basically pay stuff, Doing pay stuff was not going to pay me. And then when I got there, the guy said, "Well, we can only pay you $5 an hour." $5 an hour was, in my opinion, was a lot of money for pay stuff. I mean, it was, you're going to put your little crop marks on and paste a little label, it was, it's nothing. I mean, you could be thinking of how to, your mind would be free to think any thought you want while you're pacing up these little labels.
Mindless work.
So mindless work. I mean, so it's no responsibility or nothing. Just go there for 4 hours in the afternoon and chat up your partner. And we became good friends too. And so it was a simple, easy job. You know.
You were there for a couple of years, right?
But I told them when I started, "Oh, okay, I'll take the job," and I had no babysitter. So then started this search for the babysitter, and I got a hold of this girl who evidently everybody in the church knew this girl for some reason. So she must have gone to Holy Cross, but she had gotten pregnant and had this little child.
How old was she?
Oh, she was only like 17. You know, very young. I think she had to quit high school. Had this baby. And something happened to the baby. So, you know, baby died or something. She didn't have the baby. But I'm foggy on it, because that happened before, you know, I'm foggy on, happened before we were there. And she needed a job and had no experience or anything and needed a job. So I thought, well, at least I'll have her come until I can find somebody, you know. And then, of course, she was entertaining all your high school friends there.
Oh, yeah, I remember her.
I came home once, and here's about 5 guys sitting around laughing. And Kurt, I think, is still up in his crib, you know, because he did take a nap in the afternoon. The kids were at school. You got out of high school fairly early, before I got home. And I thought, no, this isn't going to work.
Yeah, too bad.
So very quick, I got another girl who seemed very, very responsible.
So that was like probably the spring of '67. Big event I remember that spring was the tornado. Remember that?
Oh, that was terrible. It was just terrible. We had really rough weather that first year, didn't we? With the blizzard and then the tornado.
Now,
in that house.
You were at work when that happened.
know it. Wasn't at work, I was having my hair done.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why I wasn't at work. I have the slightest idea.
Yeah, that was quite something.
But I was over at Marie's.
So it wasn't probably as bad over there.
No, it wasn't. So as I drove home, I got more panicky. Tom Weisner, though, was over there at your house.
Was he?
Yeah. At our house.
Okay. Well, I was there when it happened.
I met with you. Yeah, I know you. But the little kid, everybody was there at home, yeah. Well, I know Marie called. Marie was afraid to tell me, I think, because the kid, you know, nobody was home. Except you. It must have been a holiday or something. Didn't have the babysitter there.
Yeah.
Was it a
The
Saturday?
babysitter wasn't there. I don't think so. I don't know.
Because that's what I had that job,
Yeah.
so can't recall.
Also, somewhere around that time, I don't know if that was that year or later, you left the keys in the old station wagon, and somebody took it. Remember?
Oh, well, that was quite a few years there.
That was later.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's out of sequence.
Yeah. That was quite a few years later. I used to park every day across the street from them. And I'd leave my keys in there every day. I always left my keys in there.
Yeah, I always did.
Isn't that? That's a dumb thing.
So-
It was Batavia.
Yeah.
I didn't think of Batavia. I parked right across the street from where I worked. Batavia, somebody would steal my car. Like nobody would. And they were boys from the boys' home.
So, in this perspective, how did you feel that all the kids adapted to their first year in Illinois? How did they do?
Well, I felt sorry about you. You didn't say, they're so mean kids. You know, they were cliquey. High schools are cliquey. All high schools.
Besides me, though.
But we just moved, you know, and it was tough. I did feel bad about that.
And about the other kids?
Mark seemed to meld right in. Melinda, I don't know. I thought she was doing all right. She was a little rowdy.
Yeah.
I just remember that she didn't really get in any trouble when she was in grade school or anything, except, they didn't approve of her throwing her, fighting with the boys, and the boys threw her shoes on the roof of the school. And I thought to myself, well, is that her fault? Because the boys threw the shoes up there, but the teacher sort of had the...
Provoked the
teacher
boys?
sort of had the tone that she was acting rowdy with the boys and took off her shoe, threw them at the boys or something like that. And the boys took the shoe and threw them on the roof. That's the only thing I can remember. And then, of course, when she got to Holy Cross, she was always getting in fights with boys. And I remember the O'Dwyer kid slammed her up against a brick wall of... she's never forgiven me for this either. Me, of course, it's my fault that she got slammed up against a brick wall at Holy Cross School. She went to Holy Cross, too. And broke her tooth off.
Were you there?
No.
Oh.
She told me what happened.
How could she hold you responsible?
Because she didn't want to go to that school, for one thing. Plus, well, she didn't make much fuss about going to that school, actually. But plus, I should have sued Dr. O'Dwyer's kid.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't sue. She still does that. Should have sued him.
Yeah.
Oh.
So let's see. I remember that summer of '67. I think it was after you'd gotten rid of that babysitter, and you made a deal with me to babysit. You were going to pay me to babysit, and I was going to save the money and buy an electric guitar.
What kind of trouble did you get in?
I don't remember getting in any trouble.
But I didn't have you sit for very long, obviously, because I had Mrs. Fairborn. Wonderful. She was a wonderful babysitter. When we moved to the new house, I got Mrs. Fairborn.
That was on the Jackson Street. Okay, well that was in the
next
fall.
Which was
So I did babysit that whole summer then.
Oh yeah, I kind of remember that summer. That was all right. But I don't know what you did up there.
And it seemed like the kids were always
playing in that big there was a huge backyard there.
Yeah, and also that was their first summer in Batavia with the quarry
and Timmy was crazy about Mrs. Patcher.
Oh.
Mrs. Patcher was the most wonderful mother in the whole world.
Mm-hmm. What got them together?
They lived there.
Yeah. I mean, how did Timmy get involved? Did he just going to walk over there one day, or?
I guess so. Well, that was like an open area.
Yeah.
That whole back area was like open. There's a lot of room for little kids to run away. And she would give him cookies. And all kids liked her.
Made you a little jealous or something, huh?
No, it wasn't that good. It was future. I wasn't at that time. I thought she was a lovely homemaker. Just not my cup of tea. That's all.
Different, all right. So then, at some point, you started looking for your year lease was almost coming up, and you had to look for another house. Had you sold the house in California yet?
No.
So how could you go about thinking about buying another house when you hadn't even sold the other one?
We had to
buy another house. So, and how did you happen to find the old?
Our lease was up.
Well,
we had to leave that house on Jefferson.
How did you happen to learn about the Voight house being available?
Well, I think you told me.
I did.
Well, you hung around with that. You didn't hang around with it, but you knew those kids or something.
I knew that there was a band that practiced in the basement of that house.
And you said there's a sign in front of that house.
Oh.
Of course, we went by there a lot. We drove by there too. To the athletic field and my mother lived on that street. So I think, I saw that house as for sale sign. And I always loved that house.
So you'd seen that when you were...
But I hated that tar paper kind of siding they had on. But the bones of the house, the architecture of the house.
And you knew about that from when you were a kid?
Well, I lived in the little house on the corner, the little bungalow, brown bungalow. Now I have pictures of my Louette and I sitting on the porch of that house. And we used to go by that house all the time, but it was like the haunted house. Because then it had the original tower. The tower room was left there. But on top of the tower room, there was that actual tower, the little kind of dome, you know.
Cupola.
And cupola, or
Mhm.
whatever, cupola.
Mhm.
Cupola.
Mhm.
Cupola. Whatever. And so I always, I used to go trick-or-treating there, you know, when I was a kid. There was an old lady who lived there. It was just proof that it was a haunted house, you know. Go to the door. Anyway, so that was, I love, the minute I opened the door of that house, opened the door. Jerry had that feeling too, though.
Did he?
So it wasn't just me. You know, we opened the door and we said,
This is
we
it.
didn't care what it was. The basement, you could see the daylight through the porch boards. You know.
But you didn't care.
No, we fixed that. We said go fix it. And we did.
Mhm.
We put all that, put a lot of money into it. Cement. We put the cement porch on there.
Mhm.
But it still had that old. In fact, the woman who bought it when we sold it, that's the same way she bought it. Walked in and never looked at another house. This was it. She never had it appraised. She never had, she paid the asking price, never dickered about the price, just paid what we wanted. Had the same feeling. So I found the abstract to that house the other day. I've got to give that to that woman still lives in that house. I keep forgetting to take it with me when I go to Illinois. Because we're the last people in that abstract, and then, of course, that should go to her. Because that's when they retired the abstract, when we bought the house. It's an old, handwritten abstract. Goes way back to the lot. The abstract is not for the house, but for the lot.
So how old is it?
Well, the lot goes. The lot was the McKee development, which is that development. And I think it was probably 1849.
Wow, that was written. That's an old piece of paper then.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know if it was exactly written then, but it's pretty old. I just came across it the other day. I thought I should send that to Timmy, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna give it to that. Timmy would probably want that.
Oh yeah.
It's not a legal document anymore.
Doesn't matter.
These people's names wouldn't be on that. The people that bought it now, their names wouldn't be on it because it's no longer a legal document.
Any antebellum documents are valuable.
But I mean, her name wouldn't be added to it. Ours would be the last people that have the handwritten. The rest is all computerized.
Wow, yeah,
You know,
You should at least make a copy of that. We can. Well,
it's an inch thick.
so we'll get a copy.
All
of it.
the owners in that
That would be wonderful to
place,
have. That would really be wonderful to have.
in that address.
Well, you know, before you get rid of it, let me know.
Oh, I'm not. I just
Okay.
thought that they owned the house. It'd be nice that the thing went with the house
No.
and the land.
And that makes sense, but I'm just saying, before you go do that.
Have you seen that abstract? Haven't you?
Probably not for many years. I don't even remember. I didn't know it was that big.
Well, I moved it when we moved.
So you moved into this new place. It was you'd been in back in Batavia for over a year. Did you feel like you were all fit back in and happy to be there? And what was your feeling after your first year back?
I'm thinking of that. That year was so hectic. When we moved into the new house, I thought I was gonna slip my. I didn't. I thought I was at the end of my rope because we couldn't sell that house, and we had borrowed to get the new house on Jackson Street, the new old house. Trying to think of the amount. $5,000, I guess it was.
That's how much you borrowed?
On a note from Garby.
So he loaned you the money.
It was a 90-day note, I think. 60-day note. A note means
You pay it
you
back.
pay it.
With
Then,
interest.
when that note is due, and it had very little interest, because you don't have use of that money very long, a note. And we couldn't sell the house. Just couldn't sell the house. And it was getting closer and closer to when this note was due.
Mhm.
Anyway, then I told Bonnie. Bonnie was in the real estate, not a broker, but she would do the more, she would do the escrow part of a house sale when she lived up here in Seattle, in the real estate and that mortgage. And I called her and I said, I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to lose that house in California, and we're going to owe, for the money that we borrowed for this, And she said, well, I'll go over and take a look at the house. Because the house wasn't,
Well, she's in Seattle.
No, they'd moved back to
Oh, they had moved
California
back.
by then.
Okay.
And so they never sold that house in California. See, this part of my life is a lot of house business, money, all that kind of stuff, jobs. Not so much about the pleasantries of raising 5 children.
Yeah, if there are any.
Anyway, she went over and, because it wasn't being taken care of very well. It's a rental. There's nobody there. I had a rental agency, but they don't have any vested interest in anything, So she said, no, it didn't look too good. But she says, I think I can sell it, though. And she did.
Really?
And I wasn't there, so I don't know, the actual details.
How long did it take her? No.
I think it was about 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks.
That was good. Less than 90 days.
Yes. But it all looked so bleak. And in the meantime, Jerry lost his job.
Oh.
Still had to pay the note, but but he lost his job. So here we are. We got a house we may lose in California. Oh, this $5,000 note. I can't remember the exact amount of that note, but it was a lot of money for us. Whatever.
And then he loses his job.
And then he loses his job.
Was that a surprise to you? I mean, did he just kind of walk in the door and say, oh, guess what happened to me today?
I guess.
You don't remember much about that?
Well, he'd come home and say, see, I was like the listening person. Come home, we'd have our martinis or whatever we drank in those days. And he'd say the office politics, And it didn't sound, to me, it didn't sound too good to me. I had a feeling, my feeling was, don't talk to anyone about Jim Garvey. They go out for lunch and chit-chat, and office politics, and I just had a bad feeling about, I didn't think he should be gossiping and talking about, because it was kind
Was
of...
it private life stuff?
No, it was how everything is run. You know how people talk about their bosses? Well, it shouldn't be done that way. It should be done this way. Blah, blah, blah. Or, I don't know why he did it this way, on and on. Or do you know what he did when he went here and there, the stupidest thing I've ever seen, and all that kind of stuff. And he's sitting around having lunch talking to somebody else who works there like that. That's not wise, So... I'm not there I'm not there at his work. I don't know what slant there is on this at all. All I can, do is listen. But I didn't have a very good feeling about it, so I wasn't that surprised.
Weren't that surprised, no.
But still, I thought, muddle through,
So this sounds like if this had happened in anybody's life, all this stuff happening at about this time, that it'd feel like pretty much of a crisis.
Yes, it was. It was a crisis.
Yeah.
I ironed a lot.
You ironed a lot. That's what you did to deal with stress?
Kids probably don't remember. You probably had iron sheets and iron jammies. And little T-shirts ironed. I remember standing down there by the washer and dryer, ironing. That's all I had to do. Going to work, all I have to... Oh, I know what I did right away. I did the next day. I said I want to work full-time.
Huh?
I said I have to work full-time. And we were pretty busy.
Yeah.
at
So
work
he
too.
your boss just said, okay?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, we were busy at the time.
Yeah.
So if there wasn't the
Wasn't a
work, of
problem.
course, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But so I started going full time.
Did you ever go back to part-time after that while you were there?
It never worked. That actually too. When I started at Kelmscott, I started part time.
Mm-hmm.
That lasted about a week and a half, or 2 weeks. And then I was on full time.
So were you furious at Dad?
No, because obviously he didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah.
And if you can't, and he was frustrated enough. He wanted best for his family. I always think he tackled things so that he shouldn't have had any business tackling.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to know something about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the confidence to do. You can't bluff your way through with things. There's no way you can have confidence without knowledge. The more you know about things, the more you know about what you're doing, and that means learning about it, which isn't a big hard thing to do. Well, maybe it is if you just can't do, like you're not going to become a brain surgeon or anything, but just to learn about something, invest time and energy in figuring it out, Then you get the confidence and then you can do the thing. Got to do it, That's my opinion. So, but I mean, to get mad at somebody because, that's not, obviously couldn't do that.
Another question, different though. When you were back in California, you had a very full social life, a lot of friends. So now, what's it like after you've been back in Batavia in terms of your social life?
Well, we had Aunt Cassie. We had Marie and Gordy.
So family replaces the social life.
Mm-hmm. And Jackie and Ken were there. Miss Barbara, was my close friend. And then I had friends in school and at work. And Mike, a good friend of mine, moved away, who I was a maid of honor at her wedding. I went to art school with. She moved away. Well, she didn't move that far away, but she was like up on the North Shore in Chicago. I said, I never get up there. I never would get up there, And I'm trying to think of who else I held around with. Lois, we'd go see her once in a while. But no, Batavia people. My cousin Margie didn't live there anymore. She lived in St. Louis. So there wasn't that many people from school days, Jackie and Lois.
But you didn't feel a real, big change or gap in your
I was
life?
busy.
You're just too busy, didn't you?
I was pretty busy.
So what did you do, say, on a typical day back then in the evening? Just kind of sit and watch TV?
Well, I got home from work from Kelmscott. I think I got out of Kelmscott about 4 o'clock. So I'd usually sometimes stop at the store or stop at the ironing lady. I had an ironing lady. Always had an ironing lady. In California, too. Stop and get my ironing over. What was her name? Mrs. Remember her name when she lived on South Bend, Huron. And she'd I'd stop there and get my ironing, or stop at the store and then come home and then immediately make dinner. Because all kids ate at 5:30.
How did you figure out what to make for dinner?
I'd have a pretty good what I was going to have to eat every day written down, because then I'd shop once a week, usually Thursdays nights I'd shop. And I'd buy food for a week. And I knew what I was going to fix. And I'd cook some foods in a crock pot, too. I'd put stuff in there in the morning. And then I cooked a lot in electric fry pans that would be, like, I'd have round steak and gravy, mushroom gravy. I used a lot of instant mashed potatoes, just quick. But the electric fry pan cooked, it took about an hour for lots of different things. You could fix a lot of different things. Chili, spaghetti, simple food. Beets and cream potatoes. I always had cream potatoes when I had, and sausage. Remember we'd have Polish sausage, beets, and cream potatoes. Probably every other week. That was one of my menus.
Yeah, probably a 2-week cycle.
Sort of a Slavic
Yeah.
menu, you know. Beets, cream potatoes, sausage.
So then after dinner, everybody get together and you'd have chores for folks, or how did you handle chores for kids?
Well, then we had, but then, see, nobody did that. Everybody brought their plates in, and I think older ones should put your dishes in the dishwasher, I sort of think. Did you? You don't remember? Then you probably didn't. Probably put it in the sink. Because then Jerry and I ate later.
Mm-hmm. So you didn't eat with the kids?
No, never did.
You have different meals?
We never did. No, I'm kidding. We had our beets, cream.
Did you around the table, or did you eat in front
We
of
ate
the TV?
he always ate on a tray.
Mhm.
His whole life, I think, ate on a tray. Therefore, I did. Sometimes if I was real hungry, I would eat with you guys standing up, usually.
Mhm.
Did you remember, I can have memories of me standing by the table. With everybody around the table. Well, Kurt was little. You know, he needed assistance.
Mhm.
And so did Timmy sometimes, you know. He had to cut their food so they didn't spill their milk, give them their meal.
So mealtime was that kind of a rowdy time, or was
Yeah.
it quiet?
Well, it wasn't quiet.
Do you remember any interesting?
It was not bad. Everybody was pretty hungry.
Mhm. So did you have the TV going in the background?
No, not kitchen. I don't think so. We couldn't see the TV, so I don't know why we'd have it on, but it might have been left on. I mean, nobody's listened to the TV. Everybody was, that's the reason I started feeding everybody at 5:30 is because if you didn't eat at 5:30, people will be into the chips, and you know, kids are hungry when they get home from school.
Mhm.
And other than fighting with somebody that they didn't eat, finish your meal. I hate that, you know. Melinda, I hate beets. And she still says, hate beets. And, you know, there's always somebody that doesn't. Probably you, too. You weren't much of an eater. You were very thin. You're a thin person.
Not anymore.
And you certainly changed. Well, you changed long. You know, once you got a taste of hunger, real hunger, changed your eating habits. You became, just started eating most anything. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, very funny. So, do you have a favorite TV show?
What were all the, there was so many
There was a
good
lot of stuff going on
shows on then. I still think they had the best shows in the 60s.
What were some of yours?
What was it? What was that Mary Tyler Moore was on and all those? You know what everybody liked was Carol Burnett did. Oh, Timmy and Kurt would lay on the floor and watch that, and we'd laugh. Oh, it's hysterical. I saw some repeats on that. They're selling the DVDs and tapes and stuff, those old shows. And they're hysterical. They're so funny. There was good, it was good comedy programs on then. There's the only comedy show that's on that is the Daily Show. That's really there's no regular comedy situation
for
show
the-
that's funny.
Except for the nightly shows. I don't,
Well,
Tonight
and since
Show.
Seinfeld went off,
Mhm.
what's on that's funny? It's not. They're some on, but they're not funny.
But there were some good shows back then.
Oh yeah.
And of course, there was a lot going on in the world at that point too. Vietnam was really kicking up. Social scene was happening. Yeah, I know you were busy. Did any of that kind of filter through to you? What was going on, or were you just too busy?
Well, I really thought when the Vietnam War started, that it was, that we should help these people that wanted to be free from the North Vietnamese, country. And they had a right to have their own form of government, but, if they didn't want to be part of that.
Communist.
Yeah, and because of, the march of communism, I thought we were just sending in, if you don't remember, We were just sending in advisors that would protect little villages and all that sort of thing. That's the way we really got kind of sucked into the war. Because I thought, well, we're a big country. We could, help these people help themselves. Typical. And, well, then it got so I couldn't stand to see the same as it is now. Only many, many more guys killed. Every night I get home from work, the news would be on, and they give you the toll. I mean, hundreds of people every day. And it got so it was just terrible, the casualties.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally, that's the way most of the anti-war people, got started. You just.
Mhm.
It's
So you
just
sort
ridiculous.
at what point did your thinking change about that, though?
When we got sucked into a full-blown war.
Okay.
That isn't the way it was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose it was the Gulf of Tonkin there when we started to bomb North Vietnam.
Well, that was back in
North Vietnam.
'64, I believe, the Gulf of Tonkin. Well, most folks say that the turning point came for them was after Walter Cronkite visited right after the Tet Offensive in '68.
No, I don't think I had seen that. Or I don't remember that, so it didn't make any impression on me. I don't remember Walter Cronkite giving a program on that.
Mm-hmm.
So
it didn't make any difference.
And then, of course, it just escalated. It wasn't neat, like one day, that every day it escalated, and every day the casualties went up and up and up.
Also, there was lots going on in the social changes. The youth movement was really getting big, and people like me were bringing in all this
I was not
strange
happy
music.
with that flower generation. However, that was started. You were on the tail end of that hippie
Well,
stuff.
the summer of '67 was a